Hello, my name is Jim. This is my podcast, The Bloody Vegans. You're very welcome to it. Each week, I'll be travelling ever deeper into the world of veganism, discovering along the way a multitude of viewpoints from the political and ethical to the practical. I'll be doing this through a series of conversations, each aiming to further illuminate my understanding and hopefully yours of all things plant-centric. And this week is no different. I'm going to be chatting this week with Stella Woodward, the vegan coach. Stella's an amazing personal trainer and vegan coach to a whole host of people, vegan curious folks, newly vegan types, and actually people who've been vegan for years and just need a bit of advice, whether it be nutritionally speaking, in terms of training. And actually, what I particularly love about Stella, and we're going to hear about later in a moment in the conversation, is that Stella's coaching goes a little bit beyond just the individual. She really thinks about the individual as part of the family kind of nucleus, if you like. And that's a particularly unique standpoint, I think, as a coach. And obviously, you know, still, despite the rise of veganism, there are not that many vegan coaches that I've come across who can support in this way. So, without further ado, here's a conversation between me and Stella Woodward, the vegan coach. Seed of inspiration for you.
On the vegan or the plant-based journey, it was because of my daughter. So she's almost 8 now. So when she was 1.5, she stopped breastfeeding and started on the health visitor's advice on cow's milk products, yogurt, cheese, things like that. And we noticed almost overnight she had, you would possibly describe it as a personality change. So she went from being the happiest, most content baby you've ever seen or met, to being really quite upset, just really struggled with life, started to develop sensory issues around things like toothbrushing, getting dressed. So we just could not quite put our finger on what it was. And family members were saying, take her to the doctors, you know, she might be autistic, something like that. But I think as a parent, you just instinctively know that it's not that. So to cut a long story short, we discovered she had a dairy intolerance. So she was intolerant to cow's milk produce, which was making her very inflamed in the upper airway, upper respiratory tract. So she was snoring a lot while she was sleeping. So although she was sleeping a lot, or sleeping the recommended quota for a child her age, she wasn't actually dropping into any kind of deep or reparative sleep because she had this, what you would class as a sleep disordered breathing because of the inflammation, because of the dairy produce. So when we discovered that, we quit dairy, and within 3 days, she was a completely different child. The sensory issues disappeared, her being upset over everything disappeared, the snoring disappeared. It was quite remarkable. So that's when we went down the plant-based rabbit hole. So starting with quitting dairy produce, and then it just went on from there.
Wow, that's quite a compelling story just off the bat there.
Yeah, quite interesting, isn't it?
So it's really interesting that the impact upon her was not just a physical one. It sounds like it was sort of in behaviours almost like.
Yes, because the inflammation was stopping her from breathing correctly while she was sleeping, so she wasn't getting the benefit of her sleep, if you like, and then that would impact on her behaviour. And you know yourself, if you've had a really rubbish night's sleep, you just feel really, really irritated, don't you? And just you can't cope with the world.
Yeah.
And that's what she was like. And because she'd gone from being such a contented, such a happy baby, into a child that was experiencing issues like that, it was really upsetting to see. And we just, as a parent, I just really wanted to get to the bottom of it. We discovered the dairy intolerance. And I mean, I suppose naively looking back, I was just health visitors' advice was give them cow's milk, give them cheese, give her yogurt. So she was having loads of that, and it was obviously just having a really, really bad effect on her.
Yeah. And was your initial kind of thought process quite comfortable with the idea of either dairy alternatives or what you would kind of give her instead? Did you kind of have to do a fair amount of research, or were you kind of pretty aware of where to go?
Well, at the time, and we're talking maybe about 5 or 6 years ago now, there was, in comparison to how fast things have changed and developed in terms of veganism and dairy free. I mean, I think there was, in the supermarket you could maybe get soy milk, and that was about it really. But I think I was just so convinced that was the issue. We literally just quit it that day, and then just thought, you know what, let's just learn as we go and just learn on our feet type thing. So initially we just got rid of that stuff from our diet, and then just gradually started to introduce alternatives. But she doesn't really. She used to drink a lot of milk when she was having the cow's milk, but then she chose not really to drink soy milk or anything. I mean, now she's older, she has it in teas and maybe a milkshake or a smoothie or something. But yeah, we just got rid of it, and then thought, let's just learn as we go along type thing.
Did you have kind of dietary concerns at the time, like switching to kind of non-dairy? Because
I know what I mean, calcium and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wondered if you sort of went through a bit of a journey of like, oh my God, like if she's not having that, is she going to be deficient in this, that, or the other?
Not really, because when I started realising that, I'm very much a person that I need to then start to know or find out everything about this thing. So I just went down the rabbit hole of reading, How Not to Die and your China Study and all these other sort of books and information out there are almost saying that the amount of calcium that we consume in the Western diet from dairy produce is probably too much for the human body. So I wasn't massively concerned about that. And I knew that she had a well-balanced diet anyway. So no, I wasn't too worried about it.
And as you started to do this research, and you mentioned a couple of the sort of the go-tos, the China Study and How Not to Die and so on, as you started to get into that level of research, and I take it at this point you weren't plant-based or considering sort of veganism as a sort of wider position. So was it a bit of a revelation for you? I take it at that point as well, or?
Yes, I've always pretty much been into health and been into fitness, and always want to be as healthy as possible. And as soon as I started reading up on the topic, it was a no-brainer. It just very, very quickly snowballed from there. So as a family, we quit it straight away, and then just gradually, over maybe a space of a few weeks or a few months, we then transitioned to full vegan or plant-based diet.
Wow, so you'd done your homework and were pretty confident pretty quickly by the sounds of it.
Yeah. Once I get into something, I'm into it. I'm going for it. And my husband knows that I'm like that, so he just, if I really read up on something and I really get into something, he just trusts me, and he's like, let's do it. I trust you. Let's go for it.
And being really into your health and fitness at this point, were you kind of, did you have the kind of the traditional concerns, the what about my protein intake, those kind of things?
100%. So at the time, I was not a vegan coach. I was not a personal trainer. My original degree is in dentistry, so I'm a dental therapist. So I was heavily into fitness, training in the gym, weightlifting. So yes, the effect that the diet had on my performance and on my physique was a concern. And then that's when I started going down the vegan coach route, because I was looking for a vegan coach. I wanted a personal trainer or a coach to advise me what to eat, to build muscle, to maintain muscle, to stay lean. I needed somebody to advise me on how to maintain my strength or improve my strength and performance in the gym using a plant-based diet. And surprisingly, at that time, there was hardly anybody out there to help. I just could not find help. So then I had to basically learn everything myself, help myself, and then I just thought I need to help other people as well. So that's then when that aspect evolved.
And was the sort of, perhaps the people that you associated with in the health and fitness world, were they fairly skeptical of some of the things that you maybe were starting to introduce to them, the ideas you maybe were talking about?
Yes, there's always the where are you going to get your protein from question. And I think not perhaps quite so much now, but back then it was like vegans are almost perceived as being quite sort of weak, aren't they, and a bit pale and a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was always a bit of that. Like,
I mean, as you mentioned there just a moment ago, you were talking about the China study and how not to die, and some of these sources of kind of information, and then you went on this kind of like almost formal learning path to the place you're at now. How did that kind of start, and where did you go to look for that information and move it into a more formal space, if you like?
Yeah, it was a bit tricky initially. There was a few sort of books that I read written by sort of bodybuilders from the US, but again, not particularly scientifically backed, and a lot of the information and the advice they were given was quite US based. So the foods and the products they were talking about were things that we didn't have in the UK really. And then I happened upon a nutritionist and personal trainer called Ben Coomer. He's pretty well known in the fitness space. He's British. He's not vegan himself, but he puts a lot of really sort of sound scientific information and research and stuff out there. So sort of learned quite a bit of stuff from him, from stuff that he's published and puts out there. And then I had to do my. I'm saying I had to like it was a chore. I did my formal diploma in personal training. So level 2 gym-based instructor, and then level 3 diploma personal training. Now that very much is your sort of traditional nutrition based around meat and dairy produce and stuff like that. So obviously I had to learn that, and I kind of was taking it with a pinch of salt as I was learning it. But just really looking for the latest research on athletes and plant-based diet, and there's not a load out there. But yeah, Ben Coomer, he's a pretty reliable source, I would say. Because you've got to. There's so much information on the internet, isn't there, nowadays, that you've got to be careful who you source your information from, and how believable is it? How credible are these studies? You've got to go into it with an open mind, I think, and got to be a bit not suspicious, but just you got to question things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's. I'm sure you found this, but as soon as you mention that you're vegan to anybody, or even if you were contemplating it, suddenly everybody becomes a nutritionist who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Based on what they've read online. I imagine you still encounter that despite your qualifications and the position you're in now. Is that something you've experienced?
Yeah, and I'm quite. I'm always open for discussions with you, and there's always scientific research and stuff to back you up and stuff to refer to, but then food's one of those things, isn't it? It's tied up in cultural beliefs and religious beliefs, and there's lots of things that influence how we eat and what we beliefs around it, not just scientific evidence from clinical trials and studies. So I'm always open-minded, and I always accept the opinions of other people, and I'm not the sort of vegan that tries to make everybody else vegan. It's entirely a personal choice for all those reasons that I've just mentioned, really. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I find when people discover I'm vegan, I think they expect an argument from me, or they expect me to try and ram it down their throat, or they almost try and get into a debate with me, and I think they're always quite surprised, but I don't really take them on board with it, really. But
yeah, no, I'm with you. That's it's kind of a skill in I suppose holding your tongue or patience or whatever to not respond, isn't it, when somebody like you say is looking for that.
Yeah, sometimes I find it quite amusing, actually, because I think perhaps the only vegans that people have been exposed to. I use sort of animal rights activists because they're the ones that are out there and they're the ones that are shouting the loudest. So I think once somebody discovers you're vegan, I think they sometimes think we're all the same. And we're not really, I guess.
Yeah, I think that it's a theme that has come up a number of times. Actually, I kind of hold the view that activism is a variety of things.
Oh, can't hear. Sorry, I lost you there.
That's all right. I was going to say I sort of it's come up a few times in the podcast, and I have a bit of a view that activism's a number of things, not just one kind of methodology, if you like. It's it sounds like you subscribe to that view.
I mean, if somebody asks me about my vegan diet, my vegan lifestyle, I'll tell them what they want to know. But I don't go around trying to convert people because that's completely their own choice. And obviously I love it if people ask me for vegan recipes or advice and they want to become more plant-based and they become healthier because of it, then that's wonderful. But I'm not on a one-woman crusade to turn the world vegan. I'm here for vegans who want advice.
Yeah.
So I'm now the vegan coach that I was looking for 5 years ago. But no, I don't think I want to try and convert people. It's entirely their own choice.
Yeah. And I imagine that you probably have. I suppose actually the sort of trade-off from that viewpoint is you probably have ended up converting more people. It'd be great to sort of talk a little bit about how you've gone about kind of building such an amazing client base that you have now after 5 years.
So a lot of my clients are vegan and a lot of them have found me. So they did what I did years ago and they just literally Googled vegan coach and they found me. Whereas when I Googled it, I couldn't find anybody. So yeah, a lot of my clients are vegan and they've come to me for help because they've become vegan and they've perhaps not seen the health benefits that they thought they would, because they've maybe fallen into the trap of eating a lot of sort of vegan processed foods. So yeah, I get a lot of my client base from people Google me and then word of mouth as well. So people who are into plant-based lifestyle tend to be friends with other people who are. So they either bring their friends along to my gym or we connect online and I coach people online. So it's like a bit of the word spreads around, I guess. And I do have quite a few clients who are not vegan, but they know that I'm not the pushy vegan, and they know if they come to my gym that it's not going to get rammed down their throat. There are discussions about veganism, but normally like where's the best place to eat out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then that quite often inspires them, and most of my clients end up eating a much more plant-based diet than they did before they started training with me, which is brilliant.
Yeah, I bet. Just through your example and the sort of quality of your coaching and the support you provide people, I'm sure that they do, even if they weren't to begin with. I imagine it's inevitable almost.
Yeah, I think they see the health benefits, and I think most of my client base, I think sort of like attracts like, doesn't it? Most of my client base are sort of similar age to me, and most have got children as well. And as parents, they're always looking for recipes and ways to get the kids to eat healthier and get the kids to eat more vegetables. So I've got loads of clients who cook my recipes for the kids on a regular basis because they know that they're getting healthy, nutritious and vegetable-based meals into the children without having to try and sit your kids down and make them eat a plate of broccoli, because let's face it, no kids are going to do that.
I think that's a point I'd really like to explore with you, sort of as a parent as well, and a parent who's not only vegan but is qualified, in sort of making sure that their child has an amazing start and thrives on a vegan and plant-based diet. I'd love to sort of explore with you some of the essentials, if you like, some of the things that we absolutely should consider as vegan parents. I am one myself. I've got a little 2-year-old, so this is definitely of interest to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because kids can be fussy eaters at the best of times, can't they?
Absolutely.
I think it's important to look at getting the omega fats into the diet for the brain growth and development and the nerve growth and development, and that reduces inflammation in the body. So if you're not eating oily fish, we eat a lot of nuts and seeds in lots of different forms, and we use like seed oils, like flax oil, things like that. So I make sure that's incorporated into my daughter's diet and our diet as well. We touched on the calcium earlier on. Most of your plant-based milks and yogurts and stuff are fortified with calcium these days anyway, although it's not regulated in the industry, so it's really hit and miss how much is in there. But we'll always make sure getting plenty of calcium in the diet. Vitamin D, which is a big thing in this country for, and these really things that I'm talking about here are really things that kids who are not vegan would lack in as well as adults. So vitamin D, we do take supplements for that, but again, just trying to incorporate foods, for example, mushrooms, things like that contain vitamin D. Just trying to make sure you sort of across the board you're eating as wide a variety of a plant-based diet as possible as well. Trying to just get so many different fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, trying different things all the time. Because I think kids can become very sort of selective in what they eat. You hear some kids and they've only got maybe 5 things that they'll eat, and each one of those things are beige, aren't they? So it's and trying to, I think what works really well for us and what works really well for my clients is get your kids in the kitchen and get them to cook things with you. If they prepare the food themselves, they're much more likely, I think, to eat it themselves as well. So we do that a lot. If I ever want to introduce like a new ingredient or a new dish to our menu at home, I'll always make sure I do it at the weekend when I've got plenty of time, and I'll get my daughter in the kitchen and she makes it, and then she'll eat it, and then I can just introduce that into our weekly menu or whatever. It seems to work quite well that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, super top tip. I mean, I'm discovering that even at 2, particularly in this lockdown with a bit more time on our hands, is try and get
nice, isn't it?
Yeah, try and get the little fella in the kitchen, and he's happy as Larry. He doesn't obviously help out much at the moment. He just makes a mess, but it's lots of fun.
Oh, they enjoy it so much.
Yeah.
And just even, I mean, I will talk to my daughter about eating animal produce and how I'll talk to her how I believe certain foods are bad for your health and certain foods are good for your health. For example, we drive past McDonald's and she'll say, why do we never go there, Mummy? And I just say, because if you eat a lot of food from places like that, it's bad for your health. And as you grow older, you will grow sick, and you won't live a long and healthy life. And when we talk about when we see animals in the fields, and she says, I want the cute and stuff, and I do talk about the fact that, do you know what happens to them? Do you know why the farmers got them in the field? And just sort of introducing to her ideas around how people eat and how things like that work. Not to try and upset her or scare her, but just at an age-appropriate level. I think it's important for them to learn about food and where it comes from and the impact it has on your body and on the environment, things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm completely with you on that one. And I'd love to get your view actually on and your sort of experience on how she's kind of coped as she's a bit older than my little boy. How she's kind of navigated relationships with friends, the school parties, the kind of the lunch times at school. How have you found that experience?
Well, what I do is we at home we're strictly vegan. I cook the food, I shop for the food, so I won't buy anything that's not plant based. The way I've worked it is, if she goes to a friend's house or a friend's party, it's her choice whether she wants to consume animal produce there. What I didn't want from her for her is for her to be in awkward situations. For example, if she's invited to a friend's house for tea who's not a vegan family, how do I say to them, oh yes, you can come for tea, but you've got to cook her vegan food? Quite often they will, quite often they'll go out and make sure they've got something. But there will be an occasion where she'll go to a friend's house and she will eat some meat, and I'm fine with that. It's her choice. I think as a parent, if you over restrict your kids and over force your opinions, your views on them, then I think they're much more likely to rebel and kick back against it. The dairy thing's completely different because she does have an intolerance. So if she was to have it, it would make her poorly. So school know that, and any family or friends' birthdays or whatever she goes to, they know that. School, we just prepare her packed lunches for her. But what I do find with school, which is quite tricky, is we eat a lot of nuts. A lot of dishes we make include nuts, and when you're sending your child to school with a packed lunch, it's hard not to include nuts. Obviously we manage it, but yeah, it is pretty tricky because we pretty much live on nuts here, so that's be a tricky one.
That's definitely a challenge, that one, isn't it? Because so many, and understandably so many schools and nurseries, and we've definitely got that experience, are obviously nut free because of the dangers to the kids with the allergies. So it's difficult. I mean, it must be terrifying as a parent if your child is allergic to nuts, because it's just so it's so scary. So you've got to think of things that we can make or give her for a packed lunch. So things like hummus. Hummus is always a winner. And we make like a pasta dish, so she'll take that cold. She always finds things to eat. She doesn't starve. And as she started to kind of like, I suppose, get it, you've started to have these conversations with her, and as she's getting older, and like you say, driving past fields or going past McDonald's, etc.
Yeah.
Is she? Do you think she's starting to make a more consciously vegan choice, if you like, as opposed to just the sort of the knowing I have a dairy intolerance choice, or is she still perhaps formulating that, do you think, in her mind?
No, I think she loves animals so much, and she even, I think it was like last night or the night before, she said to me, she thinks Boris Johnson should tell everybody that they've got to stop eating animals.
I agree with that.
Just because she just feels so, like when she sees the little lambs in the field, and she just, and the little pigs and stuff like that. But then I say to I believe that everybody should not eat animals, but then I also say to that, we live in a free country and everybody's free to make their own choices and decisions. So unfortunately, the Prime Minister can't force that on everybody. But I think she definitely sees that.
Yeah, I bet the beginnings of a little activist, probably.
Perhaps.
I'd love to sort of circle back to a point there that you raised there, and I'm really fascinated by this. When you have a new client, and actually sort of bit of personal disclosure, I remember 3 years ago when I first became vegan. Like yourself, I Googled vegan coach or something similar, vegan nutritionist and this kind of stuff, because I'll be honest, I had, as we talked about earlier, you read stuff, don't you? There's so much like information, disinformation, misinformation. There's so much out there that's you almost don't know what to believe, because there's so much, and everyone's arguments are so compelling one way or the other. And I remember I went vegan purely for ethical reasons on a sort of overnight decision after watching Cowspiracy, and then thinking, well, I'm probably going to die by the things that other people had told me and the bits of information I'd heard. And so I thought, well, I better find some information out. And a bit like you, I sort of drew a bit of a blank. And I was looking solely around my local area. I wish I lived a little closer, because I would have probably struck up on the right Google search. And I know you're online now as well, so I wish I'd come across you back then. But what are the typical things that folks going through that transition period who come to you are concerned about, and maybe rightly or wrongly so, but are concerned about?
I have had actually quite a lot of people who have turned to the vegan diet. They expected that they would lose quite a bit of weight, and they've actually gained quite a lot of weight.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people quite wrongly think vegan equals healthy.
Yeah.
And I think even about 5 or 6 years ago when I became vegan, like I mentioned earlier, there was perhaps soy milk in the supermarket, but it wasn't really these vegan products that you see now. I literally did just live on fruit and vegetables, nuts and seeds, like a completely whole food plant-based diet. But now you could go around your local supermarket and you could buy a trolley load of vegan food. None of it would be whole food and not really plant-based. It's just completely processed food, isn't it? Like vegan pizzas or these ready meals, fake meats. So I think people fall into that trap and they don't actually feel as healthy as they thought they would, and they're perhaps piling on weight and they're a bit perplexed as to what's going on there. So that's probably the most common issue. So then I will introduce to them the idea of tracking the calories and being aware of your calorie intake, because whether a calorie comes from a piece of beef or whether it comes from tofu, it's still, if you're over consuming them, you still will put weight on. So I introduce them to managing the calories and try and get them really back to that plant-based and whole foods, single ingredient foods. And then they will feel a lot more energized, and sort of teaching people how to balance the diet. And I think when you're a meat eater, you traditionally just have some meat on your plate, some veg, and maybe some carbs, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you become vegan, that kind of it's all at sea, isn't it? I remember when I first transitioned to the vegan diet, it was like I was just sat there with just a huge bowl full of vegetables, and I was like, where's the protein here? So just trying to sort of construct a meal, again, being mindful of how much protein you have and how many fats you have and how much carbohydrate you have in. A lot of people can quite often fall into the trap of eating far too much carbohydrate on the vegan diet, and not really thinking about where the fats, obviously good fats and good quality proteins are coming from. So that's the thing that we kind of work on. People find that they perhaps lose strength or lose muscle tone if they're not paying attention to the protein intake. And I've had a few people who've transitioned to the vegan diet and just lost loads of weight, and they can't really see why they've lost loads of weight as well. So it's just trying to get people back on track and looking at how they're constructing the daily or the weekly diet around the calories and the macronutrients.
So is that kind of step one? Get them to track, like really understand what it is that they're currently doing. Yeah,
and I'll give them. I just sort of set them on the path. I give them recipes, give them ideas on how to construct a meal. And once I've written like a recipe ebook, which my clients will get, and I'll sometimes tweak and adjust that depending on their calorie needs or their allergies or their likes or dislikes. And then it almost shows them how to construct a meal, how to construct a snack, what sort of things to eat. I remember when I first transitioned to veganism, I used to eat eggs for breakfast, like goodness knows how many eggs every breakfast time. And then I was just like, what do you have for breakfast if you don't have eggs? So I challenged myself to have 7 different breakfasts, or different breakfasts every day from a plant-based source, just so I knew that there was a variety out there. So that's what I tend to do with my clients as well. I think there's perhaps 10 different breakfast ideas in my ebook. So it's just introducing people to that idea that you can have variety and almost like constructing, I don't want to say normal, but meals that you would just normally have, like pancakes for breakfast or sort of like porridge, things that you normally have perhaps when you weren't vegan, but just showing people how to make them in a vegan way, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense, and I love that idea actually, because I'm definitely someone who falls into the trap of familiarity and routine, and so I love the idea of making 7 different breakfasts and challenging yourself.
Challenge myself, and quite often I'll take that approach with my clients because people become overwhelmed if they want to transition to the vegan diet, because you're changing absolutely everything, because food and what we eat is just such a big part of what we are. So I'll quite often say to people, break it down, perhaps quit dairy first, and then perhaps just look at transitioning your breakfast, and then once you're confident with that, then maybe move on to lunches, just to even if it takes a few months to transition, really, if this is a choice you're making for the rest of your life, a few months is not really that much time in the grand scheme of things, is it really? You're better to take it slowly and get it right, as opposed to try it for a week and just fail miserably and just give up on that idea. So that's another tip that I use that works really well for people.
Yeah, I love that. I'd like to go back a little section as well, because I'm completely with you on the rise of sort of vegan junk food and vegan processed food has been sort of exponential over the last few years, and I swing back and forth from different points, from a sort of ethical standpoint and a animal welfare and the environment. I think, well, if that helps people get into it, fine. It's got it's got its place.
Agree.
And the fact that I can have a bit of Ben and Jerry's once every couple of months probably would make me feel happy about life, and that's great. But I do have on the other side of it, I sort of like you. I think it's sort of like it's a bit of a dangerous game as well when you start seeing the word vegan and thinking it's healthy. I'd like to get your view on things like the kind of meat substitutes, because I've noticed something sort of creeping in that's, I think, was fairly prevalent within the kind of omnivorous diet before I switched to vegan, which is the use of words like protein on the front of packets. And I even noticed I had some, about a week or two ago, I had some fishless fingers that I'd picked up from Sainsbury's or whatever. And they sort of touted on the front how they were a source of omega-3 and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And I was just like intrigued as to this sort of switch in the branding. So I was aware when I bought them. I was like, well, these are pretty processed. They're probably not the best thing to eat. I'm not going to eat them all the time. But I'd love to get your view on where you see those sort of things having a place, and the sort of the health benefits or not, as the case may be, of various meat substitutes.
I think you mentioned it there yourself. I think it's brilliant for the animal rights movement, for getting people away from animal produce. I think these companies, the big supermarkets, they're very clever. It's a money-making spin from them. They will try and put the health spin on it, but at the end of the day, they want your money as a consumer, don't they? And if you walk in and buy a pack of fishless fingers for, I don't know how much you paid for them, but I would guess they won't be that cheap. If you bought those instead of a tin of chickpeas, then you're giving them a lot more of your money. Yep. And I think a lot of people just look for convenience, don't they? And I suppose these supermarkets, the food companies, they serve what the consumer wants, and I think that's convenience, isn't it? And people like to think they're being healthy when perhaps they're not really. I think they'll have a place, and I think they're here to stay. And I think they're gonna rise and rise. Unfortunately, I don't know how that's not going to have a great impact on people's health. I don't think. And you possibly could argue would something like a fish finger be healthier than eating something that's uber super processed like that? I don't know. Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? And I suppose these sort of things have not been around long enough for there to be any sort of scientific research or evidence really behind them. But I think they are here to stay, and I think if they help people transition away from animal produce, then they're a good thing. For me, I tend to eat them in very, very limited amounts because I'm concerned about the health implications. Yeah.
So for you and the way you'd sort of steer your clients, I take it you'd be predominantly whole foods, plant-based as much as is possible, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And even trying to encourage people to buy organic where they possibly can, just to get the best quality ingredients. And if you whole food, plant-based, it's quite a cheap way of eating. Where it does become very expensive is when you go in the supermarket and buying all these sort of meat alternatives, because quite often they're more expensive than the meat, aren't they?
Yeah.
So if cost's an issue, then there is that. I mean, if you look in the freezer section of any supermarket, you can buy vegan pizza. The vegan pizza will be maybe £3, £4, £5, won't it? Whereas your non-vegan pizza would maybe be like £1. So, there's the financial implications, and I think there's the health implications as well. So I'd always steer people towards whole food, plant-based. But then again, it's always up to the individual and their decision and what their motivation is. Like you said, you primarily for animal rights reasons. That's your primary reason for becoming vegan. Personally, mine was the health reasons. So yeah, it depends what your aim is, what your goal is, I guess.
Do you find a challenge with some of your clients in terms of some of these processed things, and I guess the reason why they exist in the kind of omnivorous world, and we're seeing it replicated as we talked about in the vegan world as well, is people are so and obviously the last 5-6 weeks accepting, but people usually are very time poor in their lives, and sort of want to outsource as much as they can. They want to outsource their nutrition to a company who writes it on the front of the packet that's got protein in it or whatever. Do you have to have that sort of almost like reset of mindset with a lot of your clients around the time they want to dedicate to cooking?
Yeah, so I've taken all that into consideration, and basically every one of my recipes in my e-cookbook, one pot, they don't require really any preparation. Whatever recipe you make, it'll make about 8 or 10 portions. So you just shove it in the pot, let it cook, go away and do something else, kids' homework or whatever with them. Come back, portion it up. You have maybe your portions for your meal that night, and then you bung the rest in the freezer. And then you've got vegan fast food or vegan convenience food in your freezer. So I appreciate, myself included, I've not got time to cook each evening when we come home, but you just take something out of the freezer. So I've tried to build convenience into it. Even just simple things like if you're going to make, for example, a big pan of vegan curry, instead of standing there chopping up 4 onions, chopping up 5 carrots, I just get clients to buy bags of frozen, pre-prepared, pre-chopped, so onions, peppers, all the supermarkets do them, and you literally just open the bag, chuck it all in the one pot, and then just try to make things as quick and as easy and break down those barriers for people so that they don't feel like they've got to reach for the convenience options. And that seems to work really well for my clients. It works really well for us as a family as well.
Yeah, absolutely would. And just without giving away too many of the secrets of the ebook, it'd be good to kind of understand, like, or maybe hear from you, like one or two of your kind of favorite kind of go-to recipes that you would go to. Like, what are the ones that you if you're a bit time poor but want something tasty that satisfies the whole family, what are you going to go for?
So for breakfast, I do this baked protein oats. So I've done that as well, haven't I? I've put protein in it to try and entice people. Yes, I do a baked protein oats. So you just need a big casserole dish, bung all the ingredients in, bake it in the oven, and then you slice it into portions, and it stays well in the fridge or in the freezer, and then that's just ready the following morning. It's almost having a wedge of sort of cake for your breakfast. And you just dollop a load of soya or coconut yogurt on top of it. And it can be sliced up into smaller portions as like little snack bars. So that's always a winner for everybody, because you just prepare that on a Sunday night and you've got enough to last you then for pretty much the whole week, which is great. That's another good thing I find about plant-based foods. It doesn't go off as quickly as meat-based foods, does it? So that's a good one for breakfast. For lunchies, probably like a 1-pot mixed bean chili, again, which you just pull a portion out of the freezer, and then you can just pimp that up with a bit of avocado on the top, sprinkle some seeds on the top, maybe a handful of spinach, some jalapenos, things like that. And for an evening meal, it's got to be chickpea curry. Again, just 1 pot, dead easy to make. Have loads in the freezer and just pull it out when you need it, and just shove a bit of rice on with it, maybe some sort of stir-fried greens or something like that. So just things that I know have got loads and loads of veg in them, loads of good ingredients in them, and that everybody really enjoys, and they're quick and easy.
Sounds awesome. And my little 2-year-old does love a chickpea curry as well. So
you cannot beat it. It's our all-time favourite in this house.
Yeah, us too. He's it's the one of those things that you just guarantee he'll eat. He's never not in the mood for it. So that's great.
Yeah. My daughter asks for it frequently. She'll say, "Can we have a curry?" Sometimes we have it a couple of times a week because it's just so nice.
Absolutely. So, like, what a typical kind of client of yours? What can they kind of expect from your coaching? What does the whole package kind of look like?
Yeah, I tend to try and work with a client individually. So initially, we would go over the current situation and the goal, what they're hoping to achieve and why they're hoping to achieve it. Most people, there's a slight aesthetic component. Most people want to look a bit better, a bit slimmer, a bit more toned. But mostly the underlying current is health. People want to be healthy. I don't just work with a client as an individual. I always take the whole family into consideration. So I'm not going to give a client a diet to follow that the kids and the husband can't follow as well, or the wife can't follow as well. Because I think you're kind of setting yourself up for fail then. We go through diet and then a training plan. So if that's online purely, it would be based around their schedule. Do they want to work out at home? Are they working out in the gym? Do they have any injuries? What are the time constraints on them as well? Often people find it difficult to fit exercise in, so we'll look at ways of fitting training in for them. Depends on how many times a week they want to exercise. So I'll provide a training plan based on how often they want to exercise. And also I have clients who come into my gym, so they would do one-to-one personal training sessions, and then we would work quite closely on looking at the diet as well, alongside it. Because I don't really think you can do one without the other. I think a lot of people think, I really want to be healthy, or I want to lose weight, or I want to build muscle, whatever. I'll just start going to the gym. And really, the gym's important, but I think your nutrition is the foundation for everything, really. So we always work on that.
As I've found out to my cost, you can't outrun a bad diet, as they say.
Not really, especially as you get old. I think in your late teens, early 20s, you can kind of get away with anything, can't you, really? But yeah, as the years tick on, definitely not.
Starts catching up. There's a couple more things I'd love to talk to you about. One is supplementation. So probably a typical question for people transitioning into veganism is what they absolutely should be supplementing and what they can get through kind of diet based sources. So I'd love to get your view on that.
I think supplements, it should always be in the back of your mind that supplements are just that. They're a supplement for a healthy diet. So you should try and get as healthy a diet as possible, wide variety of plant-based foods. I think vegans and probably non-vegans alike should really be B vitamin complex. Because B vitamin is not actually a vitamin, it's more like a mineral or a bacteria that's in the soil. And just because the land has been so over-farmed, whether you're eating a vegan diet or a meat eater, we're just not getting enough B vitamins. So a B vitamin complex, definitely. I would say everybody should take that. And unfortunately, if you're deficient in B vitamins, it doesn't really show up. It takes a long, long time to show up, and a lot of damage can be done by the time you start to show symptoms. So definitely B vitamins. I think, unfortunately, in the UK, vitamin D, because we just do not get enough, certainly in the winter months. And I think a lot of people can be slightly deficient in sort of things like zinc, magnesium. That, again, can just be due to eating quite a lot of processed foods and sometimes overtraining that depletes magnesium in the body. And I would, if people were experiencing symptoms, sort of fatigue, struggling to sleep, things like that, maybe sort of like hair loss, and that wasn't rectified with a whole foods plant-based diet after a couple of months, I would encourage people to have some blood work done. because you could walk into a supplement shop and walk out with a trolley load of stuff, couldn't you? I mean, where would you end? I think you're probably better to find out what you were lacking in, and then supplement that back into the diet with supplements, as opposed to just sort of almost like a shot in the dark, isn't it? Oh, I'll try this and I'll try that. How do you measure whether that has had a beneficial effect on you or not? Or it can become quite expensive. But I would definitely say B vitamins, vitamin D. Yeah.
Awesome.
Will be those.
Awesome. Love that. And like you say, it's absolutely a minefield, isn't it? It's another industry that you can walk into any high street health food and sort of store, and you can be a bit baffled. So it's great to get a bit of your steer.
Yeah. Oh, and also the omega fatty acids. I always try and get my clients to get those through the diet, like I mentioned about the kids' diet. So sort of flaxseed, flax oils, nuts, things like that. But spirulina and kelp, like algae, plant algae. But I think it's quite often good to use an omega-3 supplement. Obviously a vegan-based one. I think that's always a pretty good one to have in there. Just for sort of reducing inflammation and supporting brain health and nerve function, things like that.
Love that. It's a really good starting point, I think, for most people. So appreciate your steer on that. I've got one sort of final question I ask loads of people, and I'd love to get your view. We touched on it a little bit earlier when we were talking about kind of activism as a whole, but I'd love to get your view on how confident you'd feel that there is a shift towards, and perhaps an ultimate goal of and I'm reluctant to say the world anymore because it's such a complex place, that we will see a really significant shift towards veganism.
I think if you were to put a time scale on it, I think we're looking at sort of long term as opposed to short term, maybe a couple of generations. But I think we are moving in that direction, and I think more and more people are realising the environmental impact of animal produce. I think people are more and more realising the health implications. Thanks to the documentaries and stuff you mentioned earlier on. I think we are moving in that direction, and I don't think that movement will stop, and I think it is going to just continue growing. If you think about the growth that we've seen in the past 5 or 10 years, I think that is only going to snowball, hopefully. And I think people are becoming a lot more accepting of veganism and of plant-based lifestyle. It is becoming much, much more mainstream now. I think I am quite confident that we'll move in that direction. Whether we'll ever get to a world where no humans consume animal produce, and I don't know if that'll ever come. But I think we'll move much, much more plant-based in the future, definitely.
Love that, and I really appreciate your perspective and your time. I'd love to just find out whereabouts we go about finding you, Stella, because I'm sure there are a whole host of people, maybe just newly vegan, maybe vegan curious, or maybe been vegan for a long time actually, who could do with the steer of somebody like yourself. So where could we go about finding you?
If you Google Stella Woodward, the vegan coach, that should bring you to my website. There's a contact form on my website, so that'll get an email directly to me. I am Stella Woodward, the vegan coach, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube as well. Where you find, I tend to try and put out quite a good balance of recipes, vegan tips, and also sort of fitness tips, healthy kids tips, things like that. I tend to try and interact with my audience and sort of just put content out there that people are asking for. So people will message me with questions and queries, and I tend to create my content around that. And it seems to be pretty well received. I've got people from this week. I've had somebody in Qatar had the kids making one of my recipes.
Amazing.
Which is pretty cool. And then I've got a lady in USA who follows my online live workouts. So yeah, it's spreading slowly but surely. It's spreading.
Love it. You're more of an activist than you probably give yourself credit for, Stella. Love it.
Perhaps.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Oh, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I love your podcast. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Stella. Bye now.
All right, bye for now. Bye.